Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. My name is Nick. I'm the pastor at Maple Grove Christian Church. Have you ever had those days where everything's going super well, like nothing seems to go wrong? You go through the day flying high and you get to the end of it and you're thinking, man, that was a great day. But then the next day comes and maybe it's not so perfect. Maybe you screw up. You give in to temptation. Maybe you're stumbling back into that sin that you've been struggling with. Have you ever had those days? Today, we're going to see somebody who may have had that happen to them as we continue our reading plan in Genesis chapters 8 through 11. That's what we were reading for today. Now, yesterday, we left off with the family of Noah on the ark waiting. The flood came, and now they're just waiting. And in Genesis chapter 8, we start with a beautiful thing where it says that God remembered Noah. So they are waiting on the ark, waiting for the flood to go down, and God remembers Noah. The water starts to recede, and after some time, dry land appears, and they are rescued. They're saved. They get off the ship, and in a little bit of chapter 8 and in chapter 9, there's a renewal of a covenant that started with Adam and Eve, and now it's going to be moved to Noah and his sons. And part of that covenant is that God told Noah and his sons to be fruitful and multiply. That's the same thing as what he said to Adam and Eve. But then another part of that covenant is that God said that he would never again destroy the earth with a flood. And he uses the rainbow as a sign of that covenant. And so it's something that we can see that when we look at a rainbow, we can know that God is never going to destroy the earth again with a flood. And I, for one, think that's pretty good. Pretty impressive kind of thing. Now, Noah and his family, they probably had to have been feeling pretty good at this moment, right? But then Noah plants a vineyard and he starts to drink and he gets to the point of being blackout drunk. Kind of passes out in a tent. And that's not great. And then something happens with him and his son Canaan. And we're not real sure what happens. The Bible is not super clear, but whatever it was bad. And it's just another reminder that sin is always crouching at the door. Even with somebody as devout as Noah. This is somebody who, when God said, you know what, go build this giant boat, he trusted the Lord and he did it. And yet sin still grabs hold of him. And we move on to chapter 10. And chapter 10 really is kind of another genealogy for the sons of Noah. We look at the line of Noah's sons. And then we move into Genesis 11, where we see unity in the world. There's one language. There's this common speech. And I think that would be a pretty good thing, right? But the people in this city named Babel, they want to make a name for themselves. They want to be God for themselves, really. So they decide to build a tower. And this tower is going to reach to the heavens. And it's really another rebellion against God. And the Lord sees this and he decides to do something, saying, you know what, if they've begun this city that they're building, this tower that they're building, nothing that they plan to do will be impossible for them because they could do it together in unity. Nothing else they planned to do would be impossible. And so the Lord comes down. He confuses their language, which I guess is why it's called Babel. And then we have another genealogy at the end of Genesis 11. But this is an important genealogy because at the end of this genealogy, we are introduced to a man named Abram. And that's where we're going to leave it off in our reading today. We will pick it up next week. Really, you continue to read tomorrow. And you'll read in Genesis 12, starting with the story of Abram. Sometimes we feel like we've got everything going in the right direction, right? But it only takes one slip up to fall into a sin. We need to continue to stay vigilant and follow the Lord's instructions. Noah, he fell into sin. So did Canaan. So did the people of Babel. We're 11 chapters into the Bible. And I don't know about you, but I really do continue to see myself in these passages. I see people who aren't perfect, who don't always get it right, even those who, for the most part, do pretty well. But the most important thing that I see is that God is still faithful. He wants to save his creation. He wants to save his people. And we can see that because after Adam and Eve sinned, he provided a promise. It was in chapter 3. The people of the earth were so wretched that he decided to destroy the earth in the flood. And yet he provided a promise. He provided an ark in chapter 7 for Noah and his family and for many of the animals. And then in chapter 9, we see that he provides a covenant, a promise. And our God is a promise-keeping God. He's going to keep that covenant. That's why we should never worry about the world being destroyed by a flood, because God said he would never do that again. And he makes a covenant with Noah. We trust the Lord because he is faithful, and he proves it over and over. This is what we're going to see all through the scriptures as we read them this year. We're going to see that God continually is faithful to the promises that he makes. All right, it is Friday. We're going to take the weekend off, but we are going to pick back up on Monday with this podcast. We'll start the story of this man named Abram, who will become the father of many nations. I hope you have a great weekend, everybody, and may God bless you as you go throughout the rest of your day today.